Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Irish NFL show. I'm Mark Cockrell. I'm joined by my comrades in arms, as always, Colin Cronin and Brian O'Leary. Good evening, gents.
Good evening, Mark. An interesting, I think, Thursday night football game, and delighted that we have Jets beat writer to join us. Brian, how are you doing this evening?
I'm grand. Yeah, before you get the real Brian on. Yeah, this game is interesting enough tonight. Jets going to the Colts. Colts coming off a difficult loss at the weekend to the Titans, and the Jets again shocked everybody. Having beaten the Titans earlier in the season to go and beat the Bengals. So it's starting to become a little bit more of an enticing game to watch later in the evening for us this side of the world.
Absolutely, Brian. And look, we're brought to you, as always, in association with our partners at Trust Gaming and at Matchbook Betting Exchange. But whereas I'm a Patriot fan who is basking or luxuriating in an unexpected win last week, there were a few unexpected wins in the NFL last week. And as Brian alluded to, probably none were as unexpected as the New York Jets and Matt White, the first New York Jet quarterback to throw for 400 yards for 21 years. We can't be joined by Michael McQuaid this evening. He's unfortunately unwell, so we're sending lots of flat 7-up up to him up in Tyrone. But we are joined by a gentleman who can tell us more about the enjoyment for the Jets in what has been a difficult season, obviously, thus far. And do they have a quarterback controversy now with Zach Wilson and Mr. White in the circumstances, Mike White? Brian Costello from the New York Post also joins us this evening. Brian, you are very welcome to join us to talk about the Thursday night football game, and we'll get on to other stories in the NFL in due course, guys. There's been a few things, one or two that have been notable. But Brian, right with the New York Post, been following the Jets for a number of years. Thank you so much for joining us on the Irish NFL show this evening. Oh, Brian, can you hear us?
Don't know if Brian has...
Thanks for having me, guys. I hope...
There we go.
Okay. Seems like I'm having some issues here. Can you guys hear me?
We got you, Brian. We got you. It's like the Jets offense. It takes a while, but it gets there in the end as it did last week. So it's all good, man. Brian, we ask every guest this. With a surname like Costello, we're assuming you've some Irish connection somewhere along the way there. Any Irish heritage? Have you ever been over to the Emerald Isle?
I've never been, but I am fully Irish. Both sides of my mother and father's families, both from Ireland. So I'm happy to be with you guys. And yeah, you guys are the only ones that call me Costello. But that's what my relatives, my older relatives, all say Costello.
Brian, well, we had you on last. We were discussing Robert Saleh, and for a lot of people, he was the coach of that a lot of people wanted. At the midway point of the season, what are your impressions of the job that he's doing there?
Yeah, I think the jury's still out. On Saleh, but there's been some good things after the 54-13 loss in New England, and then come back and win Cincinnati. That said something. It's not just Saleh; it's the whole coaching staff is very young and inexperienced. He has 5 position coaches who it's their first time as position coaches. He's got a first-time offensive coordinator. His defensive coordinator was the interim in Atlanta for a few months last year, but this is his first full-time job. So there's a lot of newness to this coaching staff, and I think they're learning on the job. But you can see some positives with Saleh. You can see what impressed the Jets when they did the interview process, and just how good a communicator he is.
Brian, last weekend, that performance from Mike White came out of nowhere, and I don't know whether Jets fans and the media are jumping the gun to a certain extent, because I saw some of the press conferences this week, and people suggesting that he potentially could be the long-term answer at quarterback, and already they're comparing to Zach Wilson and whether he is the right guy in the long term. I think Saleh's kind of backtracked slightly from what he said earlier in the week, but is there really a competition in the long run, or is this something that will play out inevitably with Wilson coming back in?
We'll know more in about how many hours? 6 hours, right? Because if the guy goes out and plays great tonight, then it's a conversation, then it's real. And I think that's what Saleh was doing. He didn't want to say, there's no way this guy can be the quarterback, because What if he goes out and tears it up against the Colts? Then you got to give him a chance. You got to ride the hot hand. Now, if he goes out and, doesn't play that great tonight, Zach Wilson is going to be the quarterback when he's healthy, and that could be next week against the Bills. They're confident that Zach's going to be back in practice next week. They sound a little confident that he'll play, but more so, it sounds like they want him to practice next week and then maybe play. But it's really going to all depend on what happens tonight in this game and how Mike White plays in his second start. Can he keep the magic going and keep this quarterback? It's not quite a controversy yet. Like, could keep the intrigue around the quarterback position going. But if he throws for 400 yards tonight, then we got a quarterback controversy. It'll be a lot of fun in New York.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, his first career start, he's got his jersey in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I just saw today, has been enshrined. Yeah. So it's only down from here, unfortunately, Mike.
Yeah. Well, a lot of Jets fans were saying, hey, slow down. Don't put him in the Hall of Fame. You guys are acting like and then Hall of Fame put him in the Hall of Fame. So I said, all right, see, we were right.
Well, I mentioned on our show the other week, Willie Joe Namath, of course, is in the Hall of Fame, and he's got a losing record. So, I mean, but he did have the famous guarantee in Super Bowl III, so you can understand it. But, like, Brian, it's very funny for me that this Jets team, like, there's so much youth. We talked about our pre-season shows, and we've talked about all through this season. You've got basically a quarter of the team's made up of rookies. Half of the team, give or take, is made up of players of under 2 years. You're going up against tonight a really tough Colts team, obviously a great running game behind Jonathan Taylor. Carson Wentz, who can be, well, we just missed Halloween, but can be trick or treat at times. What are you seeing from watching these players and following them so closely? Who are you seeing as maybe the unsung heroes that are starting to emerge and have the potential of breaking out and being the pillars for the Jets going forward?
I don't know how unsung he is after Sunday, but Michael Carter, the running back, had a really huge game, 9 catches. Mike White taking the checkdowns a lot. And he, the 405 yards that Mike White had a lot of it was yards after catch by Michael Carter. It wasn't like he was throwing the ball down the field. Mike White didn't throw one pass of over 20 yards in the air. It was all checkdowns, and Michael Carter really got a lot of tough yards. So I think he's one that's really showing what he can do. Elijah Vera Tucker, the left guard, he got off to a really kind of a rocky start, but
I'll take him out and bring him back in, Colin.
Brian, I don't know if you can hear us, but it's not just some of the Jets team had a rocky start. We're having a bit of a rocky start with
week 4.
There we are. Sorry.
Been very good.
Brian, I don't know if you can hear us. We're having a bit of a rocky start with your internet there in terms of
Michael Carter, the corner.
Gone again.
Well, you can understand gents. I mean, it's choppy in New York, and it's not necessarily always.
There could be an indie. There could be an indie there now.
He's actually probably in Indianapolis. That's true, obviously, for following the game tonight. So can't get perfect Wi-Fi everywhere.
Yeah,
it's all right. Brian,
the
comment. The comment from one of our listeners and viewers who often comments in, it's just said, "Ouch." This is like the New York Giants offense, which I think relates to the.
I think it wouldn't be a show if Fred isn't coming after me with a comment about this Giants team.
Absolutely.
Brian, I'm fascinated by this Jets team because the two teams that they've beaten are, two high-flying teams, the Titans and obviously the Bengals. And one of the things that was so impressive in the Titans victory was the ability to get to the quarterback. And even before, in the build-up to last week's game, when most people, weren't giving the Jets much of a chance, everyone was talking about the ability to get to the quarterback. How impressed have you been by the Jets and that defensive line?
Yeah, it's been good. They didn't have a great game against the Patriots. Nobody on the Jets really had a good game that day, and that really hurt them. But that's been the strength of the team, really, and kind of been a surprise because we talked about Carl Lawson all offseason. That was the big money the Jets spent, and then he got hurt in training camp, and they lost him. And we thought, okay, that might be the end of the pass rush. But they've gotten a lot of John Franklin Myers, Quinn Williams. Obviously, we expected to have a big season, and he has been good. Foley Fatukasi up there. Jack Lawson had the interception last week. Sheldon Rankins had a big sack in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, if you had to identify one position group that's been the strength of this team, it's definitely been the defensive line.
Brian, what's your thoughts on the Colts ahead of this game? Because they're such an up and down team this season. I mean, they started off poorly, seemed to be getting it back together. And then last weekend, obviously, it was always going to be a difficult game within the division. People that had written them off being 3 games behind, but now with Derrick Henry gone, and now people are saying potentially that could change the division again. And if they went on a run, you know, they're so up and down and inconsistent. Do you see the Jets having a real opportunity tonight to win this game?
I think it's going to be tough. I think the Colts are a desperate team. I think they look at this as, okay, Jets are coming in here with a backup quarterback. Colts are 3-5. They need this win, right? If they lose this one, it's pretty much over at 3-6 for them, even with Derrick Henry out. So they need to win this. I think they play the Jaguars next week. So I think they're probably looking at this and going, all right, we win these 2 games, we get to 500, then we see what happens, after that. So I think it's going to be tough. I think the Jets will play them close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I do think the Colts will end up game. I just think they need it. And they're probably a better team than the Jets overall talent-wise. And I like, a desperate team with more – like the Bengals last week were not a desperate team. Right, they're more talented than the Jets, but they were kind of riding high off of beating the Ravens, and the Jets could catch them. The Colts be on their game, I think, after losing to Tennessee on Sunday.
Absolutely, and Brian, look, in the AFC East, everyone still look. You're right. In the AFC East, obviously the Jets and everyone's still looking up the Bills, like many teams looked up the Patriots in years gone by, but they're the class act in that division, obviously, still, and well on their way, not only for division, but obviously to fighting for the top seeds in the AFC going into the postseason. Obviously, because you've seen a lot of the intra-division games and everything, what's your thoughts on how and what the Jets need to do to improve in relation to that? And your takeaway and view on the Bills and their opportunity, obviously, in the AFC this year.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of the Bills, actually, because the Jets haven't played them yet. The Jets play them next week, so I'll probably look a little bit closer to them. I feel like they haven't been on prime time much so far either, because that's usually when I see the other teams. But, the Jets are way behind right now, the Bills, and they're probably behind the Patriots too. And I thought if you asked me at the beginning of the year, I would have said the Dolphins. The Dolphins, I don't know what to make of them right now, and where they're going to go after this season. Do they get the Deshaun Watson trade done in the offseason or something? But it really rests on Zach Wilson, guys, and how much better does he become? Can he be the guy that they thought drafted number 2, and can he be close to Josh Allen and help them there? And the Jets have a lot of work this offseason. They got a lot of money to spend. They've got 9 draft picks now, and all of those are in the first 5 rounds. They have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. So this is really going to be a big offseason for Joe Douglas to get this team really closer to the Bills and starting to contend again. It's been a long time since the Jets have been a contender, and fans are out of patience. They've lost their patience a long time ago. So it's going to be up to them to close the gap this offseason.
And Brian, having a look at the Bills, bit of an advanced scouting homework for you then to figure out for the 2 games.
Yes, I know they're good. But I haven't watched them much yet, and it seemed like they were kind of finding their way. And I saw the score last week was a kind of an ugly game against the Dolphins. So I'm curious to see what they do if they take the Jaguars this week and blow them out, or if they struggle again with a lesser team.
Brian, just finally, before we let you go, a score prediction for the game tonight?
He really doesn't want to give the score prediction, Colin.
Sure. I went Colts 24, Jets
It sounds like a close game. He's picking.
Brian, you're breaking up on us, unfortunately. So we heard the Colts 24 and the Jets 20 something. You left us in suspense. So we can interpret based on that, whichever way the game goes tonight, you can be the winner because you either said 28 or 21.
Close game, but I think the Colts are going to find a way at the end to win this. Like I said.
Good stuff. Look, Brian, I know you're having trouble with the internet there, but thank you ever so much for joining us yet again on the Irish NFL Show. Brian Costello, New York Post there. You can find him on Twitter at Brian Cos, C-O-Z. We really appreciate you joining us, Brian. And we're assuming you're in Indy for the game, and we're going to blame Indianapolis Wi-Fi for evermore letting you down. But we appreciate you joining us live here tonight in advance of the game. See you later, Brian. Take care. Gents, poor Brian. I mean, it's usually Brian O'Leary's internet that's giving us problems, but Brian Costello's was giving us a bit of difficulty that time. But very seriously, guys, we'll come back to this game. Owen Farrell's asking about my son that's here. He's joining the show today as well, so we get a bit of background noise. Don't hear from Brian Costello, but hear from my youngster. But the reality is this has been a weird week in the NFL, to say the least. I mean, we've had a wide receiver who's now a felony convict who's been released. He's been released from his team, is likely to possibly see serious jail time. And he's only... And obviously, in which sadly somebody lost their life. He's only probably the third biggest or second biggest story in the NFL this week. We're talking about OBJ's dad around the draft weekend. But Colin, there was some story in the NFL this week. I might have missed it. It was so low key and quiet over the last couple of days. Just might have fallen below the radar.
Yes, I think, Mark, what you're referring to is the story coming out of Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers and the fact that Aaron Rodgers will not be playing in the game on Sunday against the Chiefs due to COVID, and whether he was vaccinated or unvaccinated or immunized or whatever it was that he was saying. It's become quite the story, and I think the reaction to it has been quite telling. I think Andrew Brandt, who is usually the voice of reason, I would say, in the league, has been very much on the Aaron Rodgers train, and says Aaron will explain what he meant and why he said immunized and all that sort of thing. But I think it is quite telling that he said he was immunized. He also said he understood players who weren't getting vaccinated, but he didn't put himself in that category. It might be to do with the fact that Carson Wentz and others had kind of taken such a kicking. But in fairness, you would have to say to Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz, at least they stood over their decision. So it is a big mess. I would say that given he's the golden goose, given that we see what the NFL tends to do when it can ignore a situation when it wants to, I would be surprised if we were to see action taken against Rodgers.
To Colin's point about the NFL ignoring it, what's come out today is that, by all accounts, the NFL are aware of it from day one that he wasn't vaccinated. And I imagine with the scrutiny around the vaccine and COVID-19 and all the protocols they put in place, it's hard to believe that they didn't know. I'm sure each team is having to submit some kind of documentation weekly in terms of who's vaccinated and who's not. I read that the max he can get fined is 18 grand for every protocol in which he's broken. Now, if the protocols will be broken on a daily basis, I'm sure at the end of the day, financially, it means nothing to Aaron Rodgers. And then yesterday's press conference with the head coach was very interesting because he says, yeah, all the protocols are met within the bounds of what I can control. But when he comes into press conferences, or a player comes into a press conference and he's not wearing his mask, I can't control that. I find that a bit far-fetched. I think the head coach yesterday was kind of left in a situation where he had to clean up someone else's mess, and it's not the first time that Aaron Rodgers has caused controversy, shall we say. But this one's an unusual one. I don't know where we're going to end up with this one. Where the Packers are going to end up really is the fact that they're probably not likelihood may not win this game on Sunday. And maybe that's a bit of a stretch to say that because they've still got a good team. But the reality is if they lose it, they're out at number 1 seed. He can't report back until Saturday week. And I know he's a great player, but the reality is he won't have any preparation done properly with the team ahead of the game on Sunday week. Which I can't recall who they're playing on Sunday week, but I'm sure it's still a tough game. So from a team point of view, I think it's quite selfish. What happens if this comes around in the playoffs? And we have a similar scenario. I'm not suggesting it's the Packers. It could happen again with another team. The Baltimore Ravens, who we know Lamar Jackson's not vaccinated. They lose a quarterback in the playoffs. I thought for a guy who wanted to win a Super Bowl, he would have been putting team first and doing everything he can in his power to make sure the team wins. And that includes get vaccinated, but obviously not.
I mean, we talked about it in the preseason, and I think, Colin, you were quite adamant about people like Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz. It was like, I want to do anything to help the team win. Well, if you're going to help do anything, you get vaccinated. And it wasn't obviously just you. A lot of people were saying that, especially about the quarterback position. You're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to be the captain. You're supposed to set the example. I've commented before, unfortunately for me, Aaron Rodgers has demonstrated time and time again he is not a proper leader of men. He blames everyone but himself for every single issue, and I don't think that you can trust a leader like that if you're just convinced that, well, if it goes wrong, it's going to be everyone else's fault but Aaron's. Unfortunately, this is one, Aaron. This is 100% your fault, your creation, and this nonsense around immunization and mislead. I mean, frankly, he knows what he was doing. That was deliberately misleading. The idea that he's gone to the NFL and said, I've had homeopathy and I've got increased antibodies, like he's some kind of superhuman or, Grand Thetan who is unable, therefore, to contract COVID. I mean, very honestly, guys, if Donald Trump had come out with this, we would all be going, oh, yeah, well, we kind of expected that. So Aaron Rodgers' brand reputation has to be affected and sullied by this. But I mean, we've seen this from him in the past. It doesn't go as reported as much as everyone likes to give out about other quarterbacks' foibles. But he's stated his belief in UFOs. He's espoused a number of conspiracy theories. He claims to be well-read and educated. Facts maybe tell a different story. And if you think I'm being unfair, maybe I'm being a little unfair. He's going to suffer the trial by media in this regard in many respects. But yeah, Andrew Brandt, who I think a lot of us, Colin, you called out, I mean, stop making excuses for him. He screwed up. He's let his team down, and he's created a situation which causes big issues and questions for Green Bay, not just now, but for the rest of the season. They're going to be asked about this. He's going to be interrogated about this constantly. His teammates are going to be interrogated about this constantly. So it is a massive piece of news, and obviously, anytime you don't have your starting quarterback, tends to be kind of important. Brian?
Well, another thing that I picked up on was the fact that you may or may not have seen the photographs on social over the weekend where he was attending Halloween parties and he was dressed up in whatever outfit he was dressed up in, and people have suggested he grew his hair to that length so he could be that character at that event at the weekend. But again, he's not vaccinated and he's going to events indoors. I know it's different country, different rules to a certain extent, but again, it's just a lack of care for anybody else who potentially could get it and have other people impacted within the family. We're going to far-reaching stories now, but
just a couple of very quick points which I think are interesting. There was a lot of debate about the fact that Rodgers also wasn't wearing a face mask at press conferences, and talk about Carson Wentz. Stephen Holder has come out to say that Wentz always wears a face mask indoors, which and he has been to 99.5% of the press conferences. Tom Brady rightly said at the start of before the season began, COVID would be a bigger issue this year than it was last year, and we're seeing that kind of play out across the league. But whatever else about Aaron Rodgers, and yes, you can question maybe the leadership and the decision making, he is and remains a ridiculously talented quarterback.
Absolutely, and that's part of the inevitable quandary when it comes to Aaron Rodgers in various times. Fred's comment there, is he trying to be Tom Brady too with the BS stuff? Brady gets blasted for the TB12 stuff and the questionable science with Eric Guerrero there. quite rightly. So Rodgers should be subjected to the same scrutiny in terms of some of his questionable activities, viewpoints, and opinions on matters to the same level. That's all I'm just saying whilst I wear my vintage Rob Gronkowski jersey. Yes. That being said, gents, it's not all about Aaron Rodgers, even though he would like it to be. I mentioned the very sad news, obviously related to Henry Ruggs III, who's now been cut by the Raiders, involved in an accident which seems to involve an excessive amount of speed and drinking under the influence. But of course, he is on trial and has the presumption of innocence at the moment, in which a lady of 23 died and lost her life in a collision. Thoughts and prayers obviously go out to her family and friends, and that's a far bigger issue than what has happened or might happen to a football player in this particular regard. But to move and to keep on something that is purely football, well, kind of football, Brian, your old friend, Odell Beckham Jr., there's a bit of rumours that he might get traded, and he didn't get traded, but his dad tried his best.
Yeah, his dad must be very well clued in on the world of YouTube, which I found quite surprising. He had all the gear there, and I believe he's doing his own podcast now. Not that he needs the money, but I don't believe his father's behind that. I think it's a ploy by Odell Beckham, and his father is the one in the back doing the kind of shouting out from. The reality is he's not happy. He's not getting the ball. The Browns team are a problem. The offense is a problem. Baker Mayfield is a problem. They're suggesting earlier in the week that they don't get on, but I think but then they're kind of pushing back and they say they do get on. They just don't get on in the field because they can't. They're never in sync with one another. And Odell Beckham's time is coming to an end there, whether it's now or whether it's the end of the season. They didn't get traded because someone doesn't want to be off the hook on the hook for $16 million, which is what's left. But the reality is for the Browns, they're going to have to pay it now anyway. So why keep a player around who's just going to continuously cause problems? Haven't seen it in New York with the Giants. It's never ending. So I think what's going to come of this is he will probably end up getting released. And there's already talk of the Raiders and potentially the Saints going in for him, and the Browns will continue to pay the salary similar to what's happened with Von Miller to a certain extent in terms of the Broncos are on the hook for the remainder of the contract. But look, he's there. Why you got to continue to pay him $16 million and continue to have the problem? I think he's going to inevitably he'll be released. He's not there at the moment. He's away from football facilities for non-related injuries. So we know what that's about. He's just causing too much trouble. Stefanski doesn't want him around. I wouldn't say he's a busted flush at this stage, but he will get an opportunity. But I mean, he got drafted 8 years ago. It's hard to believe, 8 years ago now. But things aren't going well.
It seems like longer in some respects, and yeah,
it does.
It's been a journey ever since. Obviously,
he's never been the same player coming back after ACL injury.
No, but was it his rookie season? He had the one-handed catch that blew Collinsworth's mind, or was it his second year?
That was first year.
It was his first year. So I mean, that's when he exploded into everyone's consciousness, and it seems
November 2014 actually.
I knew of anybody that would know that. I mean, he probably would have the minute, day, and hour if I asked him necessarily. But yes, definitely.
I can go there.
Definitely a fantastic moment. Look, gents, we'll move on. It's funny. The NFL has so many different strands to it. We have, obviously the games themselves, the intrigue, and the 24/7, 365-day media cycle, and so many aspects. The excitement around drafts, the excitement around different aspects, the excitement around then ancillary aspects like fantasy football and other aspects. And we've talked about it, and we obviously had a fantastic giveaway earlier this season in relation to computer games which relate to football. The big daddy of them all being Madden, of course. And so the gaming aspect, even of American football, continues to grow and evolve, and indeed is a gateway, especially for a number of fans in Europe.
We've lost Mark.
He was giving about the Indianapolis Wi-Fi. Closer to home.
Do you want to introduce our next guest, Brian?
Well, I think he was about to come in. Darren Gibson is here. Maybe Darren will give us. We'll take. Oh, he's even wearing the jersey.
Hey guys,
right on cue, Darren.
Yeah, well, look, it's first of all happy to be here, and I think what he was just kind of talking about was the whole idea that there's this growing relationship between esports in Ireland and I think even NFL in general, because one thing you'll kind of find with most gamers, most people who game, is they stay up a little bit later. When you stay up a little bit later, you start to get different interests. You're watching TV at different times. And I've noticed this trend in Ireland of people getting into gaming more and people getting into NFL more. For some, they start off getting Madden. They might get it for free on PSN. They might get it as a gift. And then they kind of move from the gaming side of things into watching NFL full time. And I think that happens a lot. It happens kids with, regular football. It happens kids with GAA. But I think with the way things are going, we're going to see this even more and more. Even with the fact there's multiple NFL players right now that stream, that game, and I know a couple of friends of mine who actually play Madden with NFL players. They're in the same Discord chats, so it's kind of cool. But I suppose I'm here to talk for Gamerstore.ie, so I'll talk a little bit about them. Gamerstore.ie is Ireland's first ever content creator platform. It's a pathway for Irish streamers, content creators, TikTokers, Instagrammers, anything that falls under that category to kind of network together and help them grow and kind of expand the idea of it as a career. Gaming and streaming, it's a career now, and some people might have questions as to how that's thing, but it's the way things are going. And obviously, Gamerstore.ie are sponsored by Trust Gaming, and we've got that lovely logo down in the bottom corner yourself. They've done a lot for you guys in the past as well, and I think they're another company that's really, really good for people getting into this area, looking for microphones, headsets, keyboards, mice, anything really, I suppose.
Well, just on that, because obviously over the past few weeks we've been running a very good competition, a really enticing competition. It was a gaming chair, a headset, and a Game Pass subscription. And with you here, we're obviously keen to announce the winner. He may not be watching the show tonight, but we'll be following up with him thereafter. And the winner is Alan Stafford, who has a very unusual Twitter handle at cabbage092. So hopefully he'll be eating cabbage when he's sitting in his new gamer chair and with the headsets on and watching NFL Game Pass as well. So it was a fantastic prize.
He's not related to Matthew, is he?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how much cabbage they eat in Dallas. I heard Von Miller talk about how excited he was to have another Texas boy, given that he's just gone to the Rams. And congratulations, obviously, to Alan. But Darren, I suppose just for yourself, in terms of how you got into the sport and ended up a fan of the Giants.
Right. This is actually a pretty interesting story. There's a couple of layers to it, right? But when I'd say I was about 9 or 10 years old and staying up late, mum and dad, they had no clue, turn on TV, it's 2 a.m. and I think Sky Sports was on from earlier in the day. And what was on but the 2004 NFL draft? And I was like, you know what? I'll watch this, 9 years old, and first thing I see is Eli Manning getting drafted and going to the Chargers first overall, and then getting traded almost instantly to the New York Giants. And I had cousins in New York. I was kind of like, you know what? I'm interested. So the New York Giants kind of stuck in my head. Obviously, at 9 years old, it's too young to become a fan of a team of a sport that you've never really watched before. But maybe 2 or 3 years later, then I was watching a game on Channel 4. This is back when Channel 4 used to show NFL games. And it was the year the Giants won the Super Bowl, but it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was a game they actually lost to the Cowboys, but it was the Giants again. And I just kept watching this Manning, Manning with his little face that he always holds, getting hit over and over and over again and just getting back up. And I was like, you know what? That's it. Giants are my team. And surely enough, a couple of games down the road, they go ahead and win a Super Bowl. And couple of years later, they went and got another one, and here's me thinking, you know what, this has been a great choice of team to support. God, was I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Since 2015, it's just been disaster after disaster, and I feel bad because I'm Eli Manning camp all day long. I will go to the hilt about him being a Hall of Famer, but as a Giants fan, the organization treated him horrifically. And you spoke about Odell Beckham earlier, and you were talking about how he's performing in Cleveland. How much of Beckham was on the style of football that Manning played? You know, the slants, the short passes, checking at the line of scrimmage, getting the ball into his hands early. Odell has had a habit of dropping deep passes. So do you think that, you know, you even see it with Saquon Barkley prior to the injuries, he had a huge drop off in numbers whenever Eli Manning retired. Once again, Daniel Jones came in, different style of quarterback. You have to kind of think to yourself, is the reason some of these players playing the way they were due to the way that Eli Manning played quarterback? Or was it due to them being supremely talented, or was it a mix of both? I think Beckham has a lot to thank Eli Manning for. Manning has a lot to thank Beckham for, because he turned a lot of 3-yard passes into, 20, 25 plus yard passes. But it's been a tough, I think for New York football fans in general, it's tough right now. We're basically the Cleveland of football this last 2 to 3 years. It's been tough.
It's been difficult. Sorry, Mark. I was just going to ask Darren, don't want to get too into the Giants conversation, but where we are at this stage of the season with no more wins coming down the line, well, we might win a couple of more games, but do you think we'll blow it up again? Well, blow it up in terms of the general manager and the head coach.
I think general manager change, yes. I think Joe Judge probably deserves a little bit more time. He's got a real authoritarian appearance when he talks to the media, and when you see him interacting with the players, he seems like a manager that is built for New York. He won't take anything from anybody. But I think maybe it's time to bring in a new general manager, and maybe it's time to bring in a general manager that hasn't been sacked somewhere else. I think that's a trend that the Giants have had. Like, people will argue whether or not Gettleman's been a great general manager for the Giants. He's brought in some good talent. There's no denying that. Some of the moves that he's made on the defensive line have been fantastic. Some of the moves that he's made in free agency have been pretty good. But there's been some strange moves as well. You got to think about when we had Barkley bringing in the running back from the Panthers to play 4 snaps over the course of the season, 4 or 5 snaps on, was it Stewart on a couple of them?
Yeah, Stewart was brought in. He never gave him any action whatsoever.
There was, he was brought in on decent money. Like, he wasn't brought in on a bum contract. He was given money that kind of reflected the work that he had done in his career. And then you kind of look at the offensive line. He promised on day one that he was going to strengthen that offensive line, but you'd nearly argue it's probably worse now than it was when he came in. Like Nate Solder, I know yourself being with your Gronk jersey in the corner, you've probably a lot of love for Nate Solder and what he was able to do in New England for all those years, but he just hasn't seemed. There's been no moves that I've been happy with, and any offensive lineman that's come in for the Giants who's done well has gone down to injury. It's just
Darren, I'm going to interrupt Ryan because unfortunately I lost internet just when I was introducing you, and I was going to apologize for kind of like, it wasn't like an evil attempt to try and avoid you, but now I joined back and I've joined the Giants podcast, and I'm kind of like, oh, Jesus Christ, what suddenly happened to the show? You're worried about the quality of football in New York. Don't worry, New York is getting great football. Look, the Bills are AFC potentials. New Jersey screwed. You got 2 bad teams in New Jersey, but that's a different matter altogether.
Well, what I was going to say on the Nate Solder thing was, and it's not so much Solder, and Mark will probably agree on this. We've seen players that are really effective on the offensive line for the Patriots. Then they chase the money in free agency, and they're not the same player again. It's more so the scheme that they're playing for with the Patriots that makes them do really well. Where's the player that went to the Raiders, Mark? Brown, is it?
Trent Brown went to the Raiders, and then we came back. Carl Van Noy 2 seasons ago, $56 million, I think he got from the Dolphins in the free agency, cut after 1 year by Flores. He's back with the Patriots. It happened. Jamie Collins has done twice, so it does happen from time to time. I'd love to say there's a secret sauce, but I think Belichick is willing to give those players that will do what he wants, do your job, a little bit more time. In fact, there's one thing as a kind of an alert to everyone I should have called out at the start. It's a very big week here on the Irish NFL show. We obviously have our usual shows tonight, Sunday, and obviously for Monday Night Football. But we have a particular special this week going out tomorrow night at 10 o'clock with a man who actually knows a lot more about Do Your Job and tells a great story about Bill Parcells' interpretation of Do Your Job. A guy who's an NFL executive for 27 years, won multiple Super Bowls alongside Bill Belichick, former GM of the Kansas City Chiefs. Scott Pioli joins us for a chat exclusively with the Irish NFL show tomorrow night. So just for those watching, don't miss that. It was actually really great guy, really good person to talk to, and obviously such a fantastic experience in the NFL. Never worked for the Giants, guys. Never worked for the Giants. Did go and visit the Giants when he was in college, when he struck up a friendship with Belichick, actually. But no, he doesn't.
Are you suggesting something, Mark?
I'm.
He is from New York. That's right. Yeah.
He is from New York, but yeah, he.
Oh my God! This is the AFC East podcast. All it took was like the Patriots to win at the weekend for Mark to suddenly get chirpy again. Where you're all chasing the Bills, boys.
But Colin, absolutely. But on this pod, we bear in mind have Broncos, Giants, and Patriots supported and everything. I've been top of the pile for the last 8 years still in team records, including last year. So I mean, I'm quite happy still. It's all good. We're at 500. Woohoo! Excitement times. What can I say? Darren, I'm sure the boys covered it while I was gone, and I apologize. But I mean, I was kind of giving you this big lead in talking about Madden, talking about gaming and things like that. I mean, what's your views on kind of how? And I know you obviously have a wider range of gaming. The gaming leagues that are playing are obviously a lot on FPS games and things like that. But there is a lot of interest. There are gaming conventions from time to time around Madden, around bringing in fans through that mechanism. And what are you seeing about that, like in Ireland and around Europe as well, generally?
Yeah, well, even in Ireland, during lockdown, there was a couple of tournaments hosted on Madden between all of the Irish teams. So I'm sure you've spoken about it many times before. You've had guests on from teams from inside the AFL, but there's been tournaments there. It's just another way to kind of connect in people who have a love for Madden and the NFL. Not only that, but it brings in new viewers. People watching Twitch they kind of follow the whole, wait, that's an Irish Madden league? And then they go, wait, there's Irish American football teams? And then their kind of interest is piqued, and then some of them even go on to join teams. So like I said, there's definitely is a path between gaming Madden and becoming a fan of the NFL, and it's become stronger and stronger as maybe the last 3 or 4 years. I've noticed the real pick up on it, even so far as when you go into any shop like an Argos, Tesco, you'll see Madden on the shelf now. But when I was younger, if you wanted Madden, you had to specially request it. You had to go and reach out to, you had to almost order it in. So it's shown that it's become a bigger thing here in Ireland, and I think it's kind of grown in hand with gaming. So with Twitch, with the amount of gamers we have on gamerstore.ie and streamers, there's a nice little opportunity there down the line to host more tournaments to get even more people involved. And like I said, there's people who've played Madden who've never watched the NFL before, and they're starting to get an interest in it.
I love Fred's comment there. He's right. Bo Jackson was the cheat code in that game, but still,
yeah,
sorry.
Absolutely. But I suppose, Darren, it would be remiss of us to have you on and not ask about your thoughts kind of on the season to date, anything that stood out, and who do you think is headed to the Super Bowl?
Oh, good question. I am loving most of the teams on the West Coast right now. I can't get enough of watching the teams in LA. Matthew Stafford at the Rams and Herbert at the Chargers. They're just so fun to watch. I think people are kind of realizing now, maybe who wouldn't have watched a lot of Detroit, how good of a quarterback Stafford actually is now that he's got a team. Because let's be real, you see what the Lions are like without him. He is a phenomenal quarterback, and when you look at the team that is being built around him, especially with Von Miller coming in now too, how's an offensive line going to handle Aaron Donald and Von Miller? I think it's going to be hard to look past the Rams making it to the Super Bowl. And the reason why I think they'll probably get there ahead of, say, the Packers is when you look at the game this weekend that you spoke about earlier about Aaron Rodgers is not going to be playing in. It could go down in his legacy that he's the reason why they didn't get that game at Lambeau. They didn't get that NFC #1 seed. And say what you like, nobody wants to go to Green Bay in November, December time and January. So I think because of that alone, we'll probably see the Rams making it to the Super Bowl again. Tampa Bay, as much of a Superman as Tom Brady is, because let's be real, he is, as a Giants fan, I'll happily say he's the greatest of all time. But there's just something not right with Tampa Bay this year compared to last year. They look human compared to last year. And obviously with what's going on with the Saints, with losing your quarterback there, it's going to be tough for them to make a run at the playoffs now too. So I'm going to say Rams against... Ooh, the AFC's tighter. It's a lot tougher to make a prediction in the AFC. I'm going to say Bills. I'm going to go through it. I think that with Josh Allen a quarterback, I think the Bills could make a run at getting to the Super Bowl. I think people would like to see a Bills-Rams Super Bowl.
Well, Darren, we're gonna remind you of this in a few months' time. Let's see how close you got to in relation to it. And look, I'm just gonna say you're going with the Rams, but bear in mind, Aaron Rodgers has been immunized against Aaron Donald and Von Miller. So who knows there? Who knows? Darren, you're very good to join us this evening. I just want one word from you before you go, though. Tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, Colts v Jets. Who you got?
You know what? Everyone's going to go for the Colts, but I'm gonna put money on White. Showing some magic again tonight. Be nice to see the Jets give it a go. I'm going to say one's a field goal game. It'll be a field goal game, and I think it'll be. I'm going to go for 24-21 to the Jets.
Love it. Darren, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Irish NFL show, on our Thursday Night Football show. Really appreciate it. We'll have you on again. Even if you're going to talk about the Giants, we'll still have you on again. Thanks very much, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. See you all later.
Thanks, Darren. Take care.
Thanks, Darren.
Cheers. And gents, look, let's continue the theme on that. On the game tonight. So Darren's going with the Jets. Let's turn our attention to that game. Who you got? Who you feeling in relation to the game tonight? Obviously, he feels that Mike White continues to be a mix of David Copperfield, David Blaine, and Siegfried and Roy. But Colin, are you convinced that he is the Magic Man?
I'm yet to be convinced. I think he had a great game, a phenomenal game at the weekend, obviously. But I think the Bengals were a little bit complacent. I think they got into a position where they were kind of convinced that they were going to win, and they let their guard down a little bit. And you cannot do that. The gap between teams, we might feel that it's enormous at times, but teams, play very, very tough in this, and clearly a Jets team that's playing for Robert Saleh. So I think the Jets will be gamey, but ultimately the Jets are going to play, but the Colts have to win. So if the Colts don't win, the season is over. And I think that they should have enough. Ultimately, I think they could have and possibly should have beaten the Titans. Carson Wentz just had an awful end to the game. The pick in overtime was just an awful throw. But we've seen him bounce back before. They have Jonathan Taylor. I think that ultimately, when push comes to shove, you will see the Colts do enough tonight. And I think that their defense is very solid. I think Frank Reich will have them up for it. And I think the Colts will win, which will keep their season alive for right now. And I think the happiest people about the situation will be the Eagles, because if the Colts win and they keep their season alive, they're on course for another first-round pick, which will please them mightily. So I'm going to go Colts. I don't expect it to be a blowout. I don't think it'll be like a 41-point win like the Patriots had, but I am going to go Colts for this one.
An interesting point that Brian, the other Brian from New York earlier on in the show said was the fact around how White didn't throw more than 20 yards last week. Predominantly, most of the yards came with yaks, as they like to call them, yards after catch. So it was quite a conservative play calling last week. But there's nothing wrong with that, because they said that was the approach in which they were taking, because they felt the players that could still affect the game in terms of going at the Bengals. But again, I'm kind of with Colin on this. I think the Colts have played reasonably well of late. They went into San Fran a couple of weeks ago and won, and Wentz has been playing well, and I think he played reasonably well last week, but unfortunately for him, those interceptions have kind of masked, which was a reasonably good performance until late in the fourth quarter when he threw that interception in the end zone, and obviously what happened in overtime. They're putting up good points. They've got players playing really well. I mean, Pittman, the second-round pick last year, is starting to come into his own with Hilton now, and Pascal's playing well. Doyle, tight end. They've got players there that can make an impact. So for me, I think similar enough. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think they'll have more than enough to win the game. So yeah, it's Colts for me.
Brian from New York also had another good point when he said on the old internet. As I have my own problems as well. I know.
Come on.
I just had to say it anyway, even though I'm equally had challenges. So still a good line. No, that's Colin messing about to knock me off. So that's the thing.
I thought you were gone again.
You deserve that.
Yeah, I did deserve it. The reality is for me on this, look, the Colts last week, they threw that game away. And because they threw it away so badly, they've probably thrown away the AFC South. Even with Derrick Henry's injury, bear in mind, the Titans still have to play teams like the Texans and the Jags 3 more times because they're in their division. So there's a number of wins they can pick up. And I was looking at the Colts really now, because they don't have the tiebreaker, have to get to 11 wins probably to take the AFC South. So there is no opportunity for slip-ups. But when they come against the Bills and the Chiefs coming up, I think there's going to be a couple more losses, which will ultimately derail their chances and hopes in that regard. But they are, as we've seen, a really good team at times. Obviously, the first half against Baltimore, not so much the second half, and some of what they've been doing on their winning streak. We haven't mentioned very much Jonathan Taylor, who will likely be this season's rushing leader now with Derrick Henry's very sad season-ending injury. And he's obviously been a real spark in their game. And Carson Wentz has mostly been treat rather than trick, which is obviously good to see. And Jets fans, look, rejoice. It was a great win. You've got to enjoy them. You've got to enjoy them when they come along. We were damning about the team. We were damning about them before the Titans game. Those exceptional and strange and unusual wins have to be enjoyed, as we all enjoy when our team wins. But ultimately, it's the hope that kills you. And I think there's just that little glimmer of hope that's making them believe. And tonight, unfortunately, like Dracula closing the door on his coffin, they're going to shut that hope and extinguish the light back out of their season. The Colts, for me, will just have way too much, notwithstanding what kind of insanity is going on with Mike White at this particular point in his career. Colts, all the way for me. Poor Michael from his sickbed has also made his pick, and he is making it a full house, gents, I believe.
Well, let's see.
Everyone, sorry I can't be on tonight. Thanks everyone for joining in. As always on the Irish NFL show. Colts against the Jets tonight. Obviously an interesting game. It probably wouldn't have been interesting until last Sunday. First off, the Colts. I really felt bad for Carson Wentz on Sunday. Like to mess up once, but then to mess up twice again, where it literally does cost you the game against the Titans. Massive, massive mistake. On the other side there, looking at the Jets, Mike White looks like a fresh stud, boys. I know he had a couple of mistakes, but look, to come back against the Bengals, albeit there was a few errors on the Bengals side, to still come back, to put up that many touchdowns, that much yards. I'm going to go with the Jets tonight. I think they're going to get it done 24-21. I don't think Jonathan Taylor and the Colts will do as well as everyone says they're going to do. And I think Carson Wentz might be a bit rusty from last week, and I think his confidence might be shot. This is the time, if you're in New York, New Jersey, the Jets believe. I've seen Peter Schrager saying that at the minute, the Jets fans believe it's their city, it's their team. I know, Brian, you'll love that. But the reality is, if Mike White goes out again and plays well tonight, what are we going to start talking about next week? Zach Wilson seems supportive. I think Mike White goes out. This is his career tonight. This is a huge game for him. Primetime football. I'm going to get him 24-21. I'm going to say that Mike White has two passing touchdowns, 340 yards, and they win the game by a touch or by a field goal. I'm taking the Jets, Jets. I'm not taking away from it. See you on Saturday Night Live at 10 p.m.
Of course he didn't make it a full house. Of course.
I knew it. I absolutely knew it.
Love it, Michael. So Michael is going on the Jets, just like he did a couple of weeks ago as well, in relation to it being the lone wolf on them this evening. Jets fans, you have a Lord and Savior who believes in you this evening. His name is Michael McQuaid. Gents, before we close up, a couple of comments coming in from people there. Owen Farrell predicted it. He's gone for the Jets, hasn't he? And instantly followed up with a bingo. Fred, yeah, we're laughing too. It's been good fun in relation to that. Any other things there? Darren, obviously, thanks for having him on. It was great to have him on, even if I came into the middle of the New York Giants. Good point that Owen throws up there, guys. George Kittle being back this weekend. Is he right? He's right. It should be huge for 49ers. One of the best tight ends in the league. But is it too late?
Sorry, Colin.
Given what the Rams have done, you'd have to say it's going to be extraordinarily difficult. And yes, the Cards have obviously lost JJ, but you would say it's difficult to see that three teams, given the rest of the NFC, will make it from that division. I think it might be a little bit too Kittle, too late.
I think they have a fair opportunity. I think if you look at the Panthers are in the 7th place as a wild card at the moment. And okay, we didn't expect them to win last weekend. I think the 49ers are well capable of going on a run. They have the players there. It's all about injuries for me with this team. The Kittle's coming back at the right time. Big game this weekend. They got to win this game on Sunday against the Cardinals at home. Kyler Murray hasn't practiced most of the week. He still has that lingering injury, so it'll be interesting to see how he comes out of that and play. He will play, but if the 49ers have any chance, they got to win next weekend. We picked them last weekend. Well, I don't call them with the Bears, but by and large, the other three picked them. They'll beat teams like the Bears. They need to step up now and win a game like this on Sunday against the Cards.
We will have to see, boys, how the Bengals bounce back, how all the teams that were surprised the weekends come back on in relation to it. We'll have to see, obviously, if the Dolphins and Lions can do anything. And as Fred asked, like Brian Flores, how long do you give him? That is going to be one of the questions for the rest of the season. Probably not that long, to be honest with you. Gents, we're going to wrap up. We're going to keep it nice and succinct tonight because we are, as I said, just to give you a reminder as what's coming up this week on the Irish NFL Show, we are tomorrow night with the one, the only Scott Pioli in a special show with him. Which is great to have him on the show. And Saturday night, we'll be back live, as Bill O'Hurley and Colin Cronin sometimes call it. We will be back live on Sunday night to give all the roundup and the build-up to the big Sunday night games, talk about it in detail. Hopefully, Mr. McQuaid will be back alive with us as well to join us. And Jojo had the song Too Little Too Late, but Colin has topped it now with Too Kittle Too Late. Fantastic.
Cannot recommend that Scott Pioli interview highly enough. He's a gentleman, he's a scholar, and he's an incredible leader. He offered us some really wonderful insights, and I think people will really, really enjoy it. And looking forward to live on Saturday evening. Should be good to go through all the games. And thanks, obviously, to everyone getting in the comments this evening. That's the best part of going live, is the ability to kind of interact. So thanks to everyone for getting those in.
Just one final one from me. He may or may not be watching, but I just want to congratulate the Cabbage again, Mr. Alan Stafford, who won our fantastic prize of a gaming chair, the headset, and a subscription to NFL Game Pass. We'll be in touch, and we'll be in touch with the Cabbage 092. That's some Twitter handle.
Absolutely, Brian. A great prize there that we're offering during the month, and congratulations to our winner there. Thanks to all the viewers. Thanks to you two boys. It's a pleasure as always. We will see you all tomorrow night and Saturday night and Monday night. We're here with all the NFL news. Look forward to seeing you again, gents. Take care and have a good night, everyone. Enjoy Thursday night football.
Cheers.